In the village of Omono, the sun was a king, and the shadows were its humble servants. Every man, woman, and child carried a shadow that stayed close to their heels, a small, quiet reflection of their own height. But Kaelo was different. Kaelo was known as the man with the heavy soul. From the moment the sun rose over the horizon, his shadow would stretch across the dusty earth like a dark, endless river. While the other villagers walked with light feet, Kaelo moved as if he were dragging the weight of the world behind him. The elders would sit under the shade of the ancient baobab trees, watching him pass. They whispered that his soul was too large for his body, and that the darkness trailing him was a sign of a coming storm. They saw a curse where Kaelo felt only a deep, silent pull. He often stood in the center of the village square, feeling the heat of the sand against his feet. He would look down at that long, dark shape pointing toward the forbidden peaks in the distance. To everyone else, it was a deformity of the light. To Kaelo, it was the only thing in his life that knew exactly where it was going. He was a silent fighter, carrying a burden that no one else could see, waiting for the day the shadow would finally lead him home. The elders called it a curse. They whispered in the dark, afraid of the men whose shadow reached for the mountains. They saw a burden, but Kaelo felt a calling. Behind his silence was a spirit that refused to break. He wasn't just an outcast. He was a warrior waiting for his moment. He knew that some paths are walked in the light, but the greatest treasures are found by those who aren't afraid of the dark. Before the village stirred, before the morning mist fully lifted, Kaelo began his march. He carried no map, only the unwavering direction of his own shadow. Every step was a declaration. The mountains, once a symbol of fear, now beckoned as a promise. He walked not away from his past, but towards his destiny. The journey had begun. The heat of the great desert was a test of will, but Kaelo's shadow did not falter. As the sun reached its peak, the winds began to shift, carrying a sound that wasn't quite a whistle and wasn't quite a voice. It was the sand itself, whispering secrets only the darkness could hear. The path was no longer just dirt and stone. It was a living map, unfolding beneath his feet, guided by the very thing the world had called a curse. The desert does not forgive the weak, but Kaelo was fueled by a fire that no sun could extinguish. Days bled into nights, and the silence became his only companion. But as the moon rose, casting a silver glow over the dunes, something changed. His shadow, once a silent follower, began to pull. It pointed with a sharp, dark edge toward a hidden ravine, a place where the starlight seemed to drown in a pool of absolute darkness. Kaelo didn't hesitate. He knew that to find the light, he first had to walk through the deepest part of himself. Kaelo reached the edge of the ravine. Below him, the darkness wasn't empty. It was humming. It was a deep, rhythmic vibration that matched the beating of his own heart. As he descended, the golden light of the cave began to peek through the cracks in the rock. His shadow grew even longer, connecting the world of the sun above to the world of the gold below. He realized then that he wasn't carrying a curse, he was carrying a bridge. At the bottom of the ravine, the silence was broken by a glow that defied the laws of the earth. Kaelo stood in a chamber where the walls bled liquid gold. It wasn't just wealth. It was light in its purest form. He looked down and saw his shadow merge with the golden floor, stretching out to touch an ancient altar. The village elders had feared his darkness because they didn't realize it was the only key that could fit this lock. In the deepest cave, Kaelo found what the sun could never show him, that his greatest burden was actually his greatest power. Kaelo reached out and touched the glowing walls, feeling the warmth of the gold beneath his fingertips. For years, he had walked with his head down, ashamed of the darkness that followed him. But here, in the heart of the earth, he realized that you cannot have a shadow without a great light nearby. He was no longer the man the village feared. He was the keeper of a secret that could change everything. With a heart full of fire and a shadow that finally felt light, Kaelo turned his back on the treasure. He didn't need to take the gold. He had already become it. The walk back to Omono would not be a retreat, but a victory lap. Kaelo reached out and touched the glowing walls, feeling the warmth of the gold beneath his fingertips. For years, he had walked with his head down, ashamed of the darkness that followed him. But here, in the heart of the earth, he realized that you cannot have a shadow without a great light nearby. He was no longer the man the village feared. He was the keeper of a secret that could change everything. With a heart full of fire and a shadow that finally felt light, Kaelo turned his back on the treasure. He didn't need to take the gold. He had already become it. The walk back to Omono would not be a retreat, but a victory lap. The gold was not a prize to be carried, but a frequency to be matched. Kaelo remained in the heart of the ravine for 40 days, allowing the silence to strip away the last of his fears. In this chamber where the walls bled liquid gold, he realized that a warrior's greatest weapon isn't his hands, but his stillness. He practiced his movements in the amber glow, his shadow dancing in perfect rhythm with the light. He was no longer just a man from a village. He was a bridge between the earth and the sun. He learned that the only way to carry the light was to become it entirely. The return was not like the departure. Kaelo did not run. He walked with the steady pulse of the earth beneath his feet. When the first huts of his village appeared on the horizon, he didn't look like the boy who had left. He carried no gold in his hands, yet he glowed with a warmth that the elders had only seen in legends. As he entered the gates, the silence that followed him was not one of fear, but of awe. He had found the treasure, but the treasure was the peace he now held within. The silent fighter had returned, and the village would never be in darkness again. Kaelo did not return with gold in his hands, but with a light in his eyes that changed everyone who saw it. He taught them that the greatest battles are won in the heart, and the strongest voice is often the one that chooses silence. The boy who left in shadows had become a man of the sun. His journey was over, but his legend was only just beginning.